thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. Please tell us your full name, a little bit about where you were born and grew up, and your family of origin.
My name is Shirley Detloff, and I was born in Glendale, California. Spent my elementary school years in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon. The family moved back to California, and we settled in Burbank, California, where I went to high school, and then I went on to college at the University of California at Santa Barbara. I come from a family of two girls, mother and father, a very normal family. We were brought up in the 50s, and we lived the life of Leave It to Beaver, and I really came into my own when I moved to Huntington Beach, California, where I became very active in the community.
What religion were you raised in, if any?
We were not churchgoers. If I had to put down a religion, I was baptized in the First Christian Church, and that is where my parents were baptized. It was where I was married, but until very recently, I have not been a regular churchgoer.
Are you going now?
I started going about a year ago. A group of friends in Huntington Beach were associated with a church locally, the Presbyterian Church, and it was a relatively new church. And I thought it was about time that I learned something of religion, because I had not been raised in that atmosphere. And so I have attended and found it a very good and educational experience.
What was it that first got you interested in politics?
Well, I think moving to Huntington Beach, and I'm going to give all the credit to the League of Women Voters. When I first came to Huntington Beach, I was a young married with three very small children, and a friend asked if I would go with her to one of the very first meetings of the League of Women Voters here in Huntington Beach. And I was taken by the enthusiasm of the women, women who really wanted to understand how government works. And I felt that I'd really found a place for myself here in this community. And that was the beginning. And I learned a lot about our community. I was part of a program called Know Your Town, which every new league has to do, and that's to become acquainted with what's happening in your community. And so I chaired that group, and we met with all of the leaders in the community, both governmental and social leaders here. Learned a great deal about a community that I was going to come to love and to be very much a part of in the ensuing years. And so the League really was the foundation for all of the work that I have done from 1964 on. And
if there was one project that the League, or two or three even, that the League, that you worked on with the League that seemed exemplary, could you mention it now?
Well, I think it got me into the environmental movement. The first major project that I was a party to and certainly a participant in was a study that the League did, and that's what I so respect about the League. They just don't go in and take a position. They do a study on every position they take. And the study was a local study, and it was the study of the Bolsa Chica. And the Bolsa Chica was this 2,000-acre area that was slated for development. It was a wetlands, and through a very thorough study by the League, they determined that it was an area that needed to be saved. That study led to the Amigos de Bolsa Chica, which I was a founding member of, and this group has been working for the past 37 years, and they reached their goal, and that was to save the Bolsa Chica wetlands, over 2,000 acres. And that came out of the League of Women Voters study.
So when you say wetlands, does that mean it's like a delta of a creek or stream, or is it ocean water that wets the land?
Well, for Bolsa Chica, historically it was two sources: ocean waters and waters that came down through Freeman Creek. That creek has long disappeared because of development within the county, but the ocean waters always came in and were the very reason for it being a wetlands. It received ocean waters, but the problem with the Bolsa Chica is that many, many years ago, a duck club made up of very, very wealthy individuals from LA and from Pasadena, established a very interesting gun club because the ducks were so numerous. It was a hunting club, it was a gentleman's club. And very interesting people have visited this club, including the future King of England was here at one time.
You mean the current crown prince?
No,
his son.
Back clear to the prince that abdicated his
Oh,
throne.
okay.
And then we have pictures. A pope visited this area. Some of the baseball greats came here because people brought them out to visit whatever their issue was at the time, and then brought them down to Bolsa Chica to do some hunting. So the history of Bolsa Chica is marvelous, but it's always been fed. It is a true coastal wetlands, and since at the time we undertook the project, 90% of wetlands had been destroyed in California, and so this was a step in the right direction, and since then many, many others have been saved.
So I noticed that you're also a member of the Coastal Conservancy. Why is preserving wetlands and the wild nature of the California coast important?
Well, wetlands are very important because, first of all, they provide a buffer. If New Orleans had let their wetlands in place, the storm damage would not have been as great because they offer that cushion between your civilization.
The storm surge.
Yes. When that comes in, wetlands are a wonderful protection. The bird life alone, we're on what is called the Pacific Flyway, so birds from as far away as South America come through the Bolsa Chica during the fall because they're going north. And we have several endangered species here. The brown pelican was one of those because of the various spills that took place in the ocean that contaminated their feeding grounds. We have four endangered species that use this area. And for most people in Huntington Beach, you've got to have an area that is left open. We're a very highly developed area in Orange County, as all of Orange County is, because people leaving the congestion of LA moved here because they wanted open space. And to the credit of the citizens of Huntington Beach, they understood the value of, if you didn't know the importance of a wetland, you certainly knew the importance of having open space. And
well, what I'm trying to drive at is, why would one of our viewers, maybe they live in Fountain Valley, maybe they live in Los Angeles, wherever, somewhere other than Huntington Beach, why would they care? Why should humans care about these four endangered species?
Well, what they should care is we're part of a food chain, and human beings and all living beings are a part of that. And if you destroy one of those parts, you eventually work your way down to destroying what we as human beings have come to expect, and our own culture, our own way of life is going to be threatened. Someone living in another community might say, well, I don't live near the wetlands, but do you like to eat fish? Is halibut part of something you like to have on your diet? Very expensive fish. You have to have nurseries, wetland service nurseries, so that fish coming into the various wetlands to spawn, have their babies, and then those babies go back to sea and grow up to be the kind of fish population that's becoming so important in the diet.
So it's similar to the way the Sacramento and the American rivers are for salmon.
That's right. Every part of nature or the environment has had a role. Now, we've destroyed some of those roles, and in destroying those, we're also destroying part of ourselves. And so we need to look at when we look at the redwood forests or we look at old growth forests, we've got to understand what they do and how they impact how we live today. And for years and years and years, we destroyed those environmental resources.
Everything.
And one of the interesting things about Bolsa Chica is that it was once the second largest oil field in the state of California. And to take an oil field, which we have done in the past, we started restoration about 6 years ago to take a wetlands that was partially destroyed because of the oil industry and bring it back to the vital resource it is today because of restoration is truly a miracle. And it was through the people who believed in it. I don't think many of us who started almost 40 years ago thought we would be tied to a project for almost all of our adult lifetime. But because we were passionate, because we believed in it, and we also, I think, had something that many organizations do not have. We understood the importance of governmental agencies and the government. There was always going to be someone in a room, somewhere in a decision-making body that would raise their hand or push a button and say, yes, I support your cause, or no, I don't. Because at the end of the day, most of these issues are going to be resolved or defeated at a governmental level.
Which is what drove you to electoral politics.
Well, during all this time, I was approached by, started serving on some committees. Because of the League of Women Voters, I was on the very first environmental board the city had ever established, and it's still functioning today. I was one of the first members of that board, and not only was able to use my environmental knowledge, but also learn much about how cities are run, because it was a city board, and as I said today, it is still functioning and still very much a part of the decision-making process in this city. And so I served on that, but at the same time, I was starting to get interested in politics. And my first real effort was I was asked to become a part of the campaign of the gentleman who was to become our assembly member. Dennis Mangers was his name, and he served in the state assembly, and he was a Democrat, and this is a very tough district for a Democrat. Orange County has always been known for its Republican stands, and so it was very rare that we could elect a Democrat, but he was elected. And I was a part of that campaign. I did voter registration, and that meant going out every evening and every Saturday and to every event and trying to get people to register to vote. Now, in registering to vote, we hoped that they would become a Democrat, but we did not control that, and whatever party they wanted to put down, of course, was they were registered in that party. He won that campaign, and I'm afraid 2 years later, he was not quite so successful, but the political bug had then struck, and I knew that I wanted to become, it wasn't just politics, I wanted to become involved in my community. And so I eventually was, through working on many, many committees, though I was appointed to the Planning Commission. A very dear friend who is...
It's a city agency again.
The Planning Commission is, we have the Planning Commission who makes decisions on all planning issues. And
like zoning.
Zoning, what projects are going to go in, those all then go up to the City Council. And so as a planning commissioner, I learned an enormous amount of good, solid information, and I enjoyed the experience immensely. But when my city council member was termed out, I knew that I was going to, if I wanted to continue with my involvement in city government, I was going to have to run for city council. And that year I ran, was elected, came in the second largest vote getter out of 22 candidates. Ralph Bauer came in first, and then 4 years later...
So your city council is elected at large, not in districts?
At large. We've had some controversy in the past over that. They've tried to put in districts, but along with Ralph and I leading a campaign, those were defeated because we feel this is a community of very many diverse interests and should be considered as a whole. So we are...
Doesn't that make it hard for minority interests to be represented?
I don't think so. I certainly hope not. It's certainly something that Ralph and I have worked consistently to try to make sure that doesn't happen. We have an organization, or several different organizations that work very hard in an area that has a lot of our minority population, simply because when they've come to the United States and have come to Huntington Beach, and have friends and family here, have settled in an area called Oakview. We've always had committees. I was on, as a city council member, liaison to that committee, where we had monthly meetings with the residents of that area, making sure that they had the kind of assistance they needed, the kinds of protections they needed, and that they were a viable community. And so there are 3 organizations working in that area. I'm